Hey guys, Books Nelson here, back with another video, and by heavy request. I really appreciate you guys are reaching out and asking for this. I got this request a lot. We are going through how to do all of the dribble moves in the game for NBA 2K. So it's going to be a one-stop shop dribble tutorial with controller cam on the screen, talking about all of the moves. Whether you're very early and new to dribbling and you barely ever dribble at all, or you're an experienced dribbler looking to tighten up their game and maybe not up on some of the nuances of the dribbling, this should have something for you. Now, I will try to keep this generally from basic to advanced, but there are some advanced concepts that affect basic dribbling. So we will discuss some of those things, but hopefully most of the more complicated moves will be at the end of the video. All right. So first things first, we have to talk terminology so that you guys know what I'm talking about. So, number one, we're going to speak in terms of clocks, right? 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, so on and so forth. So, imagine a clock. Each stick direction will be related to a clock direction. There are not necessarily more than the clock directions in 2K. You don't have to worry too much about being like between 2 and 3 o'clock, which is not the best example because that is the most accurate way to get an escape is to be between 2 and 3 o'clock to get your side escape. But for the most part, 12 and 6, 5 and 7, 3 and 9, 11 and 1, that'll mostly be the clock directions that we'll be using for each stick. Number two, ball hand and off ball hand. Obviously, pretty self explanatory, but just for an example, if the ball is in my left hand, I'll get the same dribble if I go to 5 o'clock. Now, if I go 5 o'clock again, I get that dribble, right? But now that the ball's in my right hand, going off ball to 7 o'clock gives me that same dribble again. Once again, if I go to 7 o'clock towards my ball hand, we get that. So knowing which hand the ball is in is absolutely crucial to learning the dribbling. Okay, so now going right to the very basics. So one move that we'll talk about, which I don't know if it's really a move, but it's important to know, is when you have the ball, click left stick to start dribbling again. And this is very important. Are you serious right now? That's awesome. But I'll talk through this. So it's very important because the dribbles that you get while you're standing still and dribbling are obviously different from what you get when you're standing still and in a triple threat position. So you want to absolutely have full control over which one of those you're initiating. So if you are in a standstill, as Michael Jordan is right here, and you want to move that starts with the dribble, click that left stick to start dribbling, and then you can get to that move. Now, we'll get into the triple threat later, but you can initiate dribble moves from a standstill. All right. Get Nemhard again. So we're using Nemhard because he has a nice collection of the meta dribbles, but we will be showing non-meta cards as well. So we'll be going from the top of the dribbles to the bottom as we come across some of those meta animations. Okay, so now we can get started. So with dribbling, first thing is knowing what to do from a standstill. And obviously, as you're standing still, you're not dribbling. To initiate the dribble, press left stick. So that, L3. So that is your first dribble move, is to actually start dribbling from a standstill to press L3. Number two. Okay, so we'll go left stick first, right? So if you move around with your left stick here, each dribble style does affect these animations. And this is really important. And this is why we don't skip through this. Do not skip through this if you're not like a master dribbler, because inside of the basic things, there are things that a lot of people don't know. So one of the best dribble moves in the game is called the fat stop or the Asta slide, right? Where you stop right there and you slide basically into your opponent into what we call a crab. A crab it's really a real life thing, getting your opponent onto your back, right? So you're turboing and you hold, and you see there, I'm holding on the left stick 7 o'clock. So you're holding backwards down diagonal to initiate that move, right? So that's your left stick stuff. So with the left stick, there's obviously two ways you can go. You can be moving in the left stick in any direction you want to, and depending on the dribble style, you'll move in those directions very differently. And if you'll notice, there are actually some crossovers in some of these dribble styles that are useful when you're coming out of a turbo. And then obviously you have holding turbo while pressing the left stick, right? So you have your left stick, your right stick, your left trigger, and your right trigger. Predominantly, that's everything you're using for dribbling, although there are a couple of rare exceptions. So this is obviously a right stick. We're not getting into dribble styles yet. We're just talking about running around with the left stick and holding the right trigger. I said right stick, I meant right trigger, right? So this is what that looks like in the Kyrie Irving dribble style with his motion style and all of that stuff going on. That's what in the size of his character. This does change from character to character. So if you're trying to get certain things to happen and they're happening weird, sometimes it's literally that you have to adapt to what the left stick is doing and be aware of that. All right. Before we get to the right stick, which is what a lot of people will be concerned with, we should talk about blowout dribbles a little bit. So this is left stick and just tapping the right trigger, right? So that's your blowout dribble. It gives you a lot more speed going up the court. Very importantly, you can blowout dribble directly into a crossover, right? So when you blow out into the crossover, this is, again, something most people don't know about the game, but blowing out into a crossover gives you a speed boost, right? Especially on bigs. So if you're pushing the floor with a big, that speed boost can help them a lot if they're slightly lacking in speed with ball. So, and that requires a little practice actually. So right off the bat, we're talking about basic moves. That should be a basic move, but it's not necessarily the easiest move to practice. You got to like get used to the timing of that, where the ball is when that's going forward. And the easiest way to do that, honestly, is just to practice. You know, you just practice your blowout dribbles, practice tapping the right trigger. And if you're big, you really want to get used to that crossover blowout dribble because you can chain it back and forth, but that just requires practice. So right away, before even touching the right stick, you know, we have something practicable that most of the community, quite frankly, cannot do. Okay, so now you talk about the right stick. So without the right trigger as a modifier, the right stick is going to do your size ups. Right? And let's look at the right stick when you're walking, right? Versus, you see, you don't even have to be running, right? Like, because just it'll still give you a moving crossover. So your moving crossovers do not require the use of the turbo, which is important because if you're chaining into and out of moves that do or do not require turbo, getting on and off of that turbo button as you're moving might be key to initiate or avoid certain moves, right? You may not want that turbo. So knowing that you can initiate moving crossovers without turbo is really, really important. All right. So right stick. So this is mostly going to control your size up, right? When you're not using turbo. Every size up is different. So let's talk about all of the moves in the size up from the beginning to the end. We're going to start from 12 o'clock. So from 12 o'clock, you get your non-aggressive breakdown move. This is what it looks like for Nemhard. Not very good for Nemhard, but some of these are very good. Nemhard's isn't very strong, but there are some breakdown moves that when you hit that button, they're pretty good. I think a good example of that, if we can switch over very quickly, is the greatest player of all time, Michael Jordan. So we see Michael Jordan, much better, this between the legs dribble, right? So these moves, these regular breakdown moves are very difficult to steal from. So when your opponent's over there pressing, you know, right stick ripper all the time, this is one way that you can avoid getting ripped, but still have a live dribble and be able to switch hands. And switching hands being very important, as we discussed from the very beginning, because knowing which hand the ball is in allows you to move in the proper direction on that, you know, right stick clock or left stick clock for that matter. All right, back to Nemhard. So now we're going to get into the size ups. The ball's in my left hand. So I'm going to go to 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock, like kind of between 1 and 2 at an upward diagonal angle, right? With the right stick. And that's going to give me my crossover. So we see here, he has Steve Francis size up. So his crossover has a full out leap to the other side. It's almost like a mini escape crossover, right? So for a much more tame crossover, let's say Devin Booker, all right? This is a very traditional crossover. Standing still, same input. So right away we can see how different different size up packages give us different looks with this size up. And size ups I think are far more important than people realize. So let's continue to go through them. Okay, so let's put the ball back in the same hand. We're going to go down the right side of the clock. So to cross over, we obviously go in the upward diagonal. We go straight across, we get it between the legs. Now, this is one of the reasons people like this size up so much, why it's considered the best in the game. Because as he goes between the legs, he has that pause. We'll get to that later. But just know, between the legs, 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock towards your off ball hand. All right, ball's in the same hand. We're going to go to 5 o'clock. That's going to give us that behind the back. All right, so 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock give you a behind the back. And you see here, he has a very quick, snappy, almost, Jamal Murray, De'Aaron Fox behind the back, but it's just with no turbo, no nothing, just the size up. All right. Ball in the same hand, down on the stick. This is going to be your hop back. So this move is actually attached to your, what do you call it? Your moving step back. So your moving step back controls 2 animations. And we will interrupt this non-right trigger only part of the lesson to show you the 2 moves, right? Because here we're just talking about the moving step back. So the hop back, if you're pressing nothing, if you're holding right trigger, he does the snatch back. Now, I will also note, if you're holding left trigger, you still get the hop back. And if you're holding left trigger, you still get the snap back. But you see, you get the snatch, but you still stay in that position. And I'm holding left trigger the entire time. This will be important to remember for later, but it's also important to remember, if you're in the protect ball animation, this is not a magical force field, right? That's what left trigger does, burying the lead here. This is not a magical force field that protects you from getting the ball stolen. So hitting your moves out of this, all of your size ups, is viable to switch hands so that when the defender's moving over to that hand, you can evade them by moving the ball in the right direction and protect the dribble. Nice fundamental style. All right. And that covers all of the size up moves. Now we're going to get into a concept here. So the concepts of the moves basically go like this. You have your regular moves, which is no modifier on them. No modifier being no right trigger, no left trigger, no nothing. Just the regular move. You just press the stick and the character doesn't move. You have your combo moves. So a combo move is when you put in multiple inputs to get one move. And I have to tell you about the combo moves before we can move to the next part of the size ups. So the combo moves is a quick flick from one direction to another. So in this case, we're talking about the ball's in my right hand. I'm going to go from 6 o'clock back to 3 o'clock immediately. And that's the combo move that he gets from doing that quick input. We'll do the reverse. 3 o'clock back to 6 o'clock. Boom. And he does that move. Okay? This move can be very important on different characters. And we'll show that right now. I think Jaylen Brown might have James Harden. Let me see. Yes. So he has the James Harden combo move, right? So this is the best, or regarded as the best. I think there's some other very good ones as well. But this is definitely an S tier combo move because it moves him forward. Very hard to steal the ball from him as he does it. And as he moves forward, he slides the opponent. You see, he like slides around the opponent, right? This will be important to remember for later. But that's what a combo move is. 2 inputs getting 1 move. There's another kind of move, which is a cancel move. So a cancel move is when you do a move and you interrupt it with another input. Now, this is very important. A lot of these moves have cancel windows, meaning a window of time in which if you put in an input, the move will not come out and another move will come out. In its own way, a combo move is kind of a cancel move because I'm pressing this, but I'm pressing back to the same direction before that move registers. So you're canceling out of it. You're just canceling out of it really early, right? But a cancel move is basically getting into that cancel window. So maybe I start this move entirely, but then I get out of it by putting in another input. Let's look for an example of that. Let me see. So an easier example is if we go to an escape, right? So if I go to this behind the back escape, I can cancel that behind the back escape with the left stick, right? And that'll give me the misdirection. You see that? I did the behind the back, but I canceled it by pressing the left stick. And the left stick changed the behind the back into this input, right? So that's important to understand because we're going to get to size up combo moves. But in order to do size up combo moves, you have to do them slow enough that they don't turn into combo moves. And if you're pressing the turbo button at any point while doing size up combos, you can't press the turbo button too soon because you'll cancel a size up move into an escape move. So an escape move is done by holding the right trigger and doing a size up move. Any size up move, right, will give you a version of an escape. But if you go to do a size up, you see that? If you can look on my screen, I'm actually pressing the size up first, but I'm pressing the right trigger too fast. And I'm getting an escape, right? I'm actually doing it right stick first and then the right trigger. This is a problem of execution if you want to do a size up move into something that requires the right trigger, because you have to wait before you press that right trigger for the next input. So right away, and this is not a training video, but it's impossible to teach you how to do the moves without some training being built into it. When you're doing size up moves, what you have to master is doing the moves at the pace necessary for what dribble sequence you're trying to execute. So to give an example, there is no combo move on his behind the back, right? So as fast as I want to, I can spam this behind the back over and over and get this combo move. Now, if I do that more measured and slow, he still does it, right? Now I'm doing it in a more controlled pace. Now most size ups have combos built into them. Some combos are better than others. Steve Francis has fantastic ones, as you see with this little dance move right here, right? But I'm doing this in a measured fashion. I don't have to because there's no combo moves here, right? But if I was to do the between the legs and want to get the same thing, I have to be much more measured to get the between the legs combos to come out. Because if I do them too fast, I'll get that move, right? If I do it too fast. So now, not only do I have to do the between the legs in a slow measured way, but I have to do it fast enough not to get those combo moves. But not so fast. I mean, fast enough to get this combo, but not so fast that I get the actual combo moves, right? So, and the same thing with the regular crossover. If I do the regular crossover repeatedly, he has this built-in double cross into it, which is a great move. So if I do this crossover super slow, he hops back and forth. But if I do it at a moderate pace, he has this combo built into it. All right. So that should cover everything for your size ups. So you have regular size ups in different directions, every move. Oh, and no, we haven't talked about same side hand. So if I go to the same side, I do a regular hesitation, right? If I go to the ball hand, and in this case it'll be 11 o'clock, I get an in and out. If I do backwards down diagonal, I don't get anything. It's just the same thing as a hesitation, right? So now we've covered the entire clock, right? So 12 o'clock is your aggressive. I mean, your regular combo move, your regular breakdown. 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock, whichever, will give you the crossover. Between the legs is just your side to side. And then behind the back is your 5 o'clock and your 7 o'clock. And depending on the size up, you'll get different results. Just for fun here, I'll show you guys a couple of different size ups with a couple of different results. So we'll look at Michael Jordan. Does he have Steve also? I think he has Steve also, actually. Yeah, he has Steve. Let's switch to maybe Jimmy. He shouldn't have Steve, right? No Steve on Jimmy. Now you see these measured combos, and you see there, Jimmy has actually a nice little size up combo there, right? So there you go. So different characters, different moves in just that size up combo, and depending on the moves, there's some great utility in using those moves in conjunction with other moves. We'll discuss that in the advanced part of the tutorial. But for now, we're going to move on to our escapes. So, escapes are extremely important in this game. So there are basically, so if we go around the clock again, same way, let's do the same thing. So this is what your dribble moves do on the right stick when you're holding the right trigger, right? So the first move is your aggressive breakdown. Again, Nemhart, he doesn't have a particularly great aggressive breakdown, but some of the best moves in the game actually are some of these aggressive breakdowns. And I'll see if I can find a quick example. Who has a good one? I think Jaylen Brown should have a good one, right? Let's see. Actually, we'll look at Michael Jordan since he's right here. Okay, and so we see Michael Jordan, much more exciting aggressive breakdown, which he can burst out of in any direction. So, you know, you've got that going there. Back to Nemhart. All right. So if we go to, so here's where it gets interesting right off the bat. So if you go, and this is where a little more skill starts to come in right away. So if you go north, obviously you get the aggressive breakdown. Now, if you go to 1 o'clock, you get that. This is your aggressive crossover move. Now, Nemhart's isn't particularly great, but some of these are very, very good and very important. We got to talk about how to use this aggressive crossover real quick. So the two things that are great about the aggressive crossover. One, if you input it and then you let go of right trigger and press the left stick, you could run directly out of this. Let's try that again. So see, because he has a delay, I'm actually glad we did this. He has a delay, right? You see, he picks the ball up like that. Now, this makes it tricky because these moves, if you don't cancel soon enough, they'll go into that stop. Everybody will go into some form of stop. So since he has that delay, I can't simply press the left stick immediately like I would on a character with a better move. I have to wait and then run out of it like that. Okay? And that's one thing that as you go from card to card, this is where the practice comes in, is knowing things like that and then being able to run out of that. Right? So that's your aggressive crossover. It doesn't look like much on this character, but on other characters, it's much more better and more useful. So Devin Booker, he has this one. Look at another one. Let's see what Jordan has. So Jordan has a classic, like super good one. So let's look at this and we'll talk to you about the second part of why these moves are so good. Because, so he has this attack that moves him forward, right? And we already established that out of that attack, you can run forward if you press the left stick at the right time. And then you can get back on the turbo to turbo forward. So it's a great north to south attack. But if I input a move very fast, I can combo out of this move right away. And you can absolutely kill people off of that. And I think you can combo just about anything off of that. It doesn't have to be, you know, a crazy snatchback. You can do any move in your arsenal if you input it fast enough off of that move. So we're not in the combo section, but it is important to talk about that with the escapes. All right, so we can sit here with Jordan for a while. So now we'll talk about the other escapes. So this is your money escape. This is your crossover escape, right? Your explosive crossover. So so if you're standing still, they do that. It's like a size up escape, like a hezzy size up escape. When we get to the combo section, we'll talk more about this, but it is important to understand that the execution of this is very important. If you look at the stick direction on screen, you have to hit that exact place because if you go to the side, you get the between the legs escape, right? As you can see here, it's slower. You see he leaves the ball out there for a second. And if you go too far north, you get the aggressive cross. So you have to hit that window between 2 and 3 o'clock, not at 3 o'clock, but before 3 o'clock to get that escape to come out the right way every time. And there are some rough animations if you mess that escape up. So be very careful. In fact, I'll show you one of those right now. This is what makes Jimmy Butler slightly more challenging to use. Jimmy's great, and he has a fantastic escape, a park escape, right? You see that? He slides very quickly out of that. But if you're too north-south on Jimmy, actually, does he still have his own escape? I think they might have switched it. Oh, there it is. There it is. See that dribble where he picks the ball up really slowly? If you go a little too much at an angle, Jimmy does that right there. And you don't want that. You never want to get that animation because it can just destroy your whole possession if that happens. All right. So that is your escape there. And where are you, Michael? Boom, back to Michael Jordan. Okay. So now your next most important escape is your behind the back. So this is 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock while holding right trigger. It's a very popular move. You'll see this a lot in any level of the game. And this is what makes cards good nowadays with the Jamal Murray behind the back. We'll get more into comboing that later, but we're just going through what the moves do. So as we discussed earlier, down or 6 o'clock and an escape gives you a snatch. And so we see here, this looks like the John Wall snatch, right? Very, very great move. And we saw here we comboed that snatch out of that aggressive cross. And I'm just pressing, basically up, down, slightly to the left, up, down, and getting a really explosive combo right away, right? All right. So now the ball's in the same side. Backwards down diagonal gives you a hezzy. Side gives you a hezzy. And you get this turbo in and out, right? This in and out hezzy. If you go to either 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock, you get this in and out hezzy. This move will become very, very important later on. All right. Now, before we move forward, we have to discuss one more aspect to the basics. So your controls, definitely you want right stick on absolute. Absolute just means that those cardinal directions don't move. However, and this is extremely important to understand, the left stick is always camera relative, right? So if I'm in front of the basket and I move with the left stick in different directions, so you see me here moving 5, 7, right? 3, 6. If I go over here and I go 3, 6 and 5, 7, he does different moves because of where the character's facing, right? This is important to understand because if we go back to this snatch back, you see his shoulders there? Let's replay that. You see his shoulders? He turned to the side. So if you're trying to do a move out of a move that turns you to the side, understand that on your right stick, everything will be the same. But if the move involves any left stick manipulation, then his shoulders being turned is an important detail in the dribbling animation. All right. So a lot of people's messed up inputs will come because the character is turning to the side when they're moving and they don't realize that the character having turned has changed what the game will ask you to do. And so with that, we're going to move on to dribble styles because this detail is very important for dribble styles. So dribble styles, we talked about before, just moving around. Different dribble styles have different built-in crossovers and stuff like that, depending on how fast you're going and what direction you move the left stick. That's all contextual. Outside of the fat stop, there's nothing in there that's like super duper important. But it is important to know that you can switch hands and stuff like that like normal. Now, the important thing about the dribble style is when you're holding the right trigger. Okay, once you're holding this right trigger, the left stick directions become now your source of power. So if Michael Jordan, we're just going to hold forward. That's what he does when he holds forward, right? We're going to hold with the ball in the right hand, 11 o'clock. Now we're going to do the same thing. Hold 9 o'clock. And I may have been saying 3 and 6 this entire time. I apologize if I was. I always mean 3 and 9 when I say that. All right. And now we're going to hold 5 and 7 o'clock. Right. And now we're just going to see what happens when we pull directly back. Okay. So that's what he gets out of his dribble style. So just to talk about everything we saw, holding forward is generally a push cross of some kind, right? Now holding to the side will likely be, it depends on the dribble style, you'll get different things. Michael Jordan has this really snappy push cross, right? And then holding backwards, he has this other push cross, which is very similar to Devin Booker's, but Booker has the faster version. So let's look at Booker's dribble style. Holding forward, he does that push cross, right? And we'll hold to the side. He goes between the legs. And back, he also goes between the legs. Let's look at Kyrie Irving dribble style, the most powerful one in the game. Now, the Kyrie Irving dribble style is not powerful because of his push cross, but we'll get into that. Actually, you know what? We'll do it right now. So we're going to move a little bit more into the combo moves section now, because you guys have the basic standalone moves down, and most of the moves after this involve some comboing, right? We went over the right stick moves, the escape moves, and the dribble style moves. So now we're going to start talking about comboing at this early level. So we discussed this Steve Francis size up. If I do a size up and then I run out of it, at the right time I get a burst. This is because of the Kyrie Irving dribble style. So far as I know, he's the only dribble style in the game that gets a burst out of everything. So whatever size up you do out of that Steve Francis size up, you can simply run out of it. But by contrast, let's look at Michael Jordan. I think this Michael Jordan should have his own, he has his own dribble style, right? So this Michael also has the Steve Francis. But look at how different the Steve Francis is on his dribble style. Exploding. You see that? He does not get the same explosion that the Kyrie Irving dribble style gets. He gets a slow burst every time, right? Or a slower burst every time. There are some dribble styles that get no burst. See if we can find somebody that obeys that rule. I think all of these cards are too new. What do you have? Let's just see what he's talking about. So what dribble style does he have? He looks like he might have, I don't know what dribble style this is, because he has a slow push cross. That's actually not a terrible push cross. That's a slow push cross right there. The forward one doesn't look too bad. It's almost like, it looks kind of like the Booker almost. But he doesn't have the same between the legs when he goes backwards. I'm actually going to look this up during the video. I'm curious what this is, because he's definitely behaving very differently. There we go. Cameron Thomas. What is your dribble style, sir? This is the Allen Iverson dribble style. Okay, very good to know. So we look at the AI dribble style. He does not have a burst. Well, actually, you know what? Off of the crossover, he did get a burst right there. He can burst out of the crossover with the Allen Iverson dribble style, right? So I didn't know that. I've never used this dribble style. But you see here, now knowing how dribble styles work, this is how you find what works and what doesn't. So with his size up, it's very difficult because of his size up to burst out of anything besides the crossover. But out of his crossover, he has this nice clean burst out of that cross, which is good to know. All right. So the Allen Iverson has a quick push cross going forward, really quick push cross, basically the Devin Booker push cross going forward, which I did not know because I never, until this video, never used the Allen Iverson dribble style. I was just looking for something that wasn't Jordan or Kyrie or Booker, right? So he has a great push cross just like Booker. He has the Michael Jordan push cross going to the back, two different speeds of the same push cross. But then off of the standstill, he gets that burst. So it's actually a pretty solid dribble style, right? A good blend of several dribble styles. And we just learned that just now by analyzing how these dribble styles work. All right. So that's what you get out of the Kyrie Irving dribble style, is you get that burst. But also, Kyrie can change direction. And no matter which direction he changed, there's no pauses, right? Like you see, so even though these dribbles like between the legs and the behind the back and stuff like that, they're not explosive, but they also don't have any pause. And so they blend well with all of your dribbles. So going back to what we talked about before, say I do the measured Steve Francis dribbles, I can just move around the court very freely, just having the information that we had leading up to this moment, right? No fancy dribbles whatsoever, just literally moving the right stick at a measured pace, knowing which dribbles I'm trying to initiate, keeping in mind the combos that I have available to me, and knowing that with a good dribble style, I can explode out of those moves. Now, let's look at Michael Jordan's dribble style in that same situation, because it is very different. So with Michael Jordan's dribble style, even though I have this Steve Francis size up, I don't have the same freedom of motion, particularly because if I press the wrong direction, I get a slower push cross, right? And I also can't explode the same direction as fast. So if I go the same way, I can't just keep going the way I can. So I can go back, forth, right? But I can't go that same direction and get an explosion. We will talk about how to manufacture that explosion as we go forward. All right. So that is your dribble styles. Now we're going to talk about the advanced use of your escapes. So first things first, you can combo your escapes with your regular dribble moves, and you can combo your escapes with each other. So first things first, if you do an escape back to back, you will get strange results. So if I do the Kemba escape one way and then the other way, I get this. This is the same thing as his double cross animation. Like this double move, the same thing is happening. It's just happening much slower because this move is carrying out. But during the entire animation frames of this move right here, this is all still in his combo window, right? So if I don't let this move play out, this is all cancelable. But the thing is, if I cancel it too soon with another escape, he goes into this canned double combo animation, which we don't always want to do because this kind of traps us into certain things, right? Now let's look at the escape going into and out of other combo moves, right? So we're just talking about escape combos here. So we're going to do the Steve Francis regular into a combo into the escape. Oh, wrong direction, right? So see, that's what you want to be careful of with the escape moves. But there we go. So now we got the same effect as that double escape, right? So the same thing as this, except by putting the Steve Francis first, I still have the same control as if I did one escape. So if you like what this is doing for you visually, moving your character from side to side, and you have the Steve Francis, use the Steve Francis first, or use the Steve Francis second, right? So this is the escape first, and then the Steve Francis afterward. So let's look at the between the legs escape. Same thing. Between the legs, Steve Francis. You see here, I got to be real mindful of when I'm pressing trigger and when I'm not pressing trigger. So that we talked about earlier becomes very important. Okay, let's look at the behind the back. And we're going to combo this with different regular Steve Francis moves. Right? So with the Steve Francis in particular, you get a lot of freedom of motion out of that dribble style. Let's look at somebody who does not have the Steve Francis, but has some similar dribbles, right? So he has a similar behind the back, not exactly the same, but you see here, he doesn't have the Steve Francis. So let's look at that same technique on a different character. You see here, much more stop and start, much more pause going on. And so we'll look at, it's funny, I want to downgrade him just looking at those handles. And we see here with Jimmy Butler, completely different results. So now you can start to see why people who dribble get so obsessed with the way some of these dribbles blend into one another, because you can get a lot more freedom of movement with some of these moves. All right. So we cannot leave the escape part of the conversation just yet. So we also have the hesitation, right? So this is like your turbo hesitation, which is different than your regular one. That's your regular hezi. And this is your hezi, your turbo hezi, right? So if we go to your first escape, this one, you can run out of that escape by pressing the left stick. Now, there are different cancel windows for this. If you go too early, you'll get a momentum dribble, right? So this is where we talk about the cancel moves. We talked about this escape having a long cancelable window. If you cancel early in this window, you get the momentum. If you cancel at it, so right there, I canceled at exactly the right time. And what I got was I got an escape burst, right? And they're basically perfect versions of that escape burst. And that's where the skill comes in, is hitting that escape and getting the burst at exactly the right time. So you get the fastest version of that escape burst. You see that I did the escape burst. The second to last one, see, we can replay this. So this one right here, going this way, there was a pause, right? You see that? I got the escape burst. I didn't get the pull up hezi, which I'll show you in a moment. I didn't get the momentum cross, but it was a pause there. But watch this next one. Very smooth, no pause, right? So that's the practice of escape moves. So this move is really important, because I've said a lot of times, if your character has a great escape move and that's all they've got, they can still function on the court. They can still be very good because these moves are so powerful, because this is your, I think previously it was your best crossover in the game. Now I'm starting to think it's your second best crossover in the game, but this is basically your best crossover in the game, right? And when you burst, you want to burst at an angle. You don't want to go too forward. You don't want to go too much to the side. You're bursting at an angle just like that. But that escape burst is your first step into more advanced dribbling. And it's very important because really having that change of direction, that explosive burst in one direction is very, very powerful. So especially if you don't have the Kyrie Irving dribble style, where you can just go whichever direction you please, as we discussed. So that's the first thing. We're not going to get into L2 canceling until later in the video, but that escape burst is super important. That can also be done between the legs, by the way, right? So between the legs, you can also get the same burst, but it depends on the between the legs animation. Usually the between the legs is slower, but there are some escape animations where the between the legs is actually better than the escape itself. So same thing. Now the nice thing is you can't get a momentum between the legs necessarily, but you do get the you can get this combo move. You see that move right there where he ducks his head down? So if you're not careful with the between the legs, you get the that move right there, that duck down move. And you got to watch out with that duck down move if that's not what you want. But yeah, you can burst out of that between the legs just as well. That was a great burst right there out of the between the legs. Now, behind the back, you cannot burst out of the behind the back. However, if we take this explosive hezzy move, right, and we combo this with the behind the back, we can get a same side burst. Now, if you'll notice, when I went down back diagonal, I got the same hezzy as I got going to the side. So what this results in, if I go behind the back and then I do that down back diagonal hezzy, that will allow me to explode, because out of the hezzy, you can burst if you hit the animation at the right time. You can hezzy burst in the same direction, right? So, oh wait, can Michael Jordan not do it? I think Mike actually can't do it with his hezzy. That's kind of funny. Most hezzy you can do it. So here, now this is actually an important thing to cover. I will show a character that can hezzy burst. In fact, I think we'll do it real quick with Nemhart just to complete the thought, but we're going to come right back to Michael Jordan and show you what you do when the character can't do that. So Nemhart has the kind of hezzy burst that he can hezzy cancel the same direction, right? So he has Chris Paul hesitation. And so the Chris Paul hesitation going that way looks like that. Going that way looks like that. So this is to the side and this is to the 7 o'clock, right? Out of both of these, if I hit them at the right time, I explode in the same direction, right? Explode in the same direction. You can see on the screen the timing of that. It's basically a 1-2, right? And you can explode the same way. And what you're doing is before that hesitation animation begins, right? Early in that window, before this shows up, you're just running out of that, right? And the same thing for, if you're holding to the side, you're just running out of that before it goes. So obviously, before the ball starts to dribble and do all of that stuff, you want to get the burst in right before that happens. Now, when you go behind the back and you input that burst, that's all you're doing, is you're saying you're putting that in early and you're hiding it inside the cancel window. Okay, back to Michael. So Michael does not have a hesitation that allows him to burst out of it if he does a hezzy. So what he has to do is he has to do the in and out, that turbo in and out we talked about. He can burst out of this animation, right? So if he goes behind the back and then he hits the turbo in and out going up in the same direction, he can now burst the same side. And we'll do that real quick. And you see it right there. So now instead of getting that pause from the behind the back that we got right there, he got the burst. Let's do that again, this direction. There we go. And he got the same side burst going the same way. Now, what that also allows him to do, if I try to do the behind the back over and over, I'll get the regular Steve Francis behind the back. Because the Steve Francis is so good, it doesn't look that bad. But on a worse size up, it's going to look far worse, right? So if you want the behind the back over and over, now with Michael Jordan, it's going to be more difficult. What you have to do is you have to go behind the back to the in and out, and then you have to go behind the back in the other direction. But you have to do it quickly to hide that in and out. And that's how you execute that, right? So you're going 7, 11, 5. Dude, a little too slow, right? And so you got to get it in. You got to get the other direction in before that. And see, you see there how quickly I did it right there. So what I noticed was if on the other animations that have this, the hezi, I can wait. But on this one, you have to put in that other direction quickly. So the rhythm of that is more like 7, 11, 5. That quickly, right? So 7, 11, 5. Got to do it even faster. Even faster. Man, that is so much harder to do than the regular one. There we go. And you see there the quick inputs on that. You can tell I don't use Michael Jordan's card a whole lot, so I would have to practice that to get it as good as it is on, say, Nemhart, which I will show you here. Nemhart has a, I guess you would call it a stronger hezi. Well, definitely with Chris Paul. You see here with Nemhart how easy it is. It's an even pace of 5, 5, 7, 7, and I can spam behind the back as much as I want. And anytime I want to, I can burst in the same direction because this is handling both options just by pressing that input twice. Because his hezi allows him to do that, he doesn't have to resort to the in and out to do that. All right, now going back to the in and out though, we're going to go back to Jordan because I don't want the Kyrie Irving dribble style hiding this move. So if we go to Jordan, if he explodes going forward, he has this. I actually wish I had somebody with a worse. You know what? Let's see Cam Thomas. Because I don't want the dribble style to hide this. So if Cam Thomas tried to explode forward, you see he gets this sideways push cross. This is pretty quick and pretty snappy. And I would go as far as to say, I hope to see more Allen Iverson dribble style on cards because I do think this is a good move. However, if we go back to the beginning of the lesson, right? Or the middle of the lesson, look at what his shoulders are doing when he does that move, right? Look at his shoulders. See how they go to the side there? You don't want his shoulders going to the side if you don't want his shoulders going to the side. There are benefits to the shoulders going to the side. So if you have the shoulder going to the side, you're going to get into your Pro 2 leaners very easily, which can be a very good thing, right? You can get to that right away. However, if you're trying to go towards the basket, you don't want your shoulders turning off of that push cross that way. And that's what happens when I hold pretty much north to south with Allen Iverson. Really 11-2, but he'll get that. If I let his shoulders square, he'll get the push cross. If you see him doing a faster one, it's going back to what we said, his shoulders are turning. So going back to this in and out, right? This turbo in and out. So if I go same side, he'll burst out of it. But if I go opposite side, he does a quick burst crossover. That quick burst crossover. This crossover is so fast. I don't know if it's translating on screen, but when I say it's fast, it's not just the character moving, it's the character's response to your input. So to compare this to the escape, right? Let's get a character with a better escape real quick. So if I compare this with the escape, the key to the escape is putting in the escape, doing that input, and then waiting for the character to start his move. So you do not have permission to do what you're going for until you input the escape and wait for it to start to happen. And hopefully you can see on the screen just how delayed this is. Like if I was to count it out, right? I'm going to hit the button. I'm just going to 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. You see on 3, the move starts to come out. 1, 2, 3, 4. You see that? That's real time. That's not just the delay from the controller on the screen. This move has what we call in fighting games startup frames of animations, right? So the positive to it is once it happens, it's very explosive and it gives you a lot of options, which we'll get into later. But the negative to it is you are effectively waiting for the character to start moving. However, with this cross, we can stay on Michael for now. With this one, if I was to go 1, 2, 3, 4, it happens like on 1.5, right? So if I want to cross over from left to right the fastest way possible, that right there, as soon as the input is in, so 1, 2, 3, 4, like literally at 2, he starts to run, you know, like almost before 2, between 1 and 2. So this is a faster move in terms of your inputs, right? And the way you do the move, again, is you just do the in and out, and then you press the opposite direction on the left stick as if you were doing a push cross in the northern direction, and that will give you your in and out explosive cross move. Just like that. That was it. Super fast from input to execution. So it's not just the speed of the move itself, it's the speed of the move in the relationship to how long ago you pushed the buttons, right? When I'm doing this move, I pushed the button 500 years ago, right? Back in 2K23, I asked Michael Jordan to do an escape move, and he sent me an email saying, "I got you, boss," right? And so that's the one thing about escapes that's not great is you have to have the space because you have to be able to plan it a little bit. But with the in and out cross, if you want to go on your opponent, you can literally do that as soon as you create the space. So I do highly recommend you guys not only learn the in and out cross, but also the explosive burst out of the in and out, because that is a very strong move. Okay, that part of the tutorial over. Let's go ahead and keep moving down the line of moves before we get to the super advanced combos. So let's see. So that is so now we're going to actually talk about, we talked about aggressive breakdowns. So that's the aggressive breakdown. It's the same thing as the normal breakdown. It's just a different animation. There's nothing inherently different about it. But I will say, as you see here with a great dribble style, Michael Jordan can hit that aggressive breakdown and burst out of it, which just gives you a different rhythm to play with the opponent with, just a different ways to manipulate your opponent and move the character. This varies from player to player, animation to animation, and the use of it varies. Some of them move you backwards, some of them move you to the side, some of them move you forwards. And that actually reminds me, specifically for this example, I brought out Mr. Scoot Henderson. Okay, so this is Scoot's behind the back. He has the Jamal Murray behind the back. Excellent. Scoot is one of the few characters in the game with this super powerful combo. So this is the, wait, does he have it? Maybe he doesn't have it. I thought he had the Ja Morant. He does not have it. It says he has it. The Ja Morant breakdown. Oh, unfortunately, Scoot doesn't have it. Thought he had the Ja breakdown, but he doesn't have it. Sorry, guys. So we'll keep it moving. We'll go back to Michael Jordan. But if you have the Ja Morant breakdown, the Ja Morant aggressive breakdown moves you way out to the side. And if you hit the behind the back or the escape off of that, it moves you way to the other side. And if you know how to do your escape burst, you can go way one way, explode the other way, and absolutely cook your opponent out of their shoes. So let's go ahead and grab, we'll stick with MJ for now. Okay, so let's talk about, we went with the behind the back. Now let's talk a little more about these snatchbacks. Okay, so there's a few things to talk about. One, that's not the only way to snatch back. If you see here, this is an escape snatch. So the same way we did an escape and we press the left stick to run out of it, you can also do an escape and press the left stick down to retreat out of it, which just gives you another way to back up a little bit. And depending on the escape and the character, you'll have different ways. This is more of a combo move than a true retreat. But if you're dribbling in a box and you don't want to go too far backwards, this could be a move that you'll find useful when you don't want to create too much space. You just want to get a little bit away from your opponent and manipulate them that way. All right. So here we have the hop back and the snatch back. So the use of these moves, we're just talking about how to do them for the most part, which is you hold turbo, you press down on the stick or 6 o'clock to get the snatch. And if you don't hold turbo, you get the hop back. We're talking about the turbo modifier one. If you press down repeatedly, because of his shoulder turns, it will combo his snatch back into his behind the back. So here you have to be disciplined about your controls when you want these snatchback animations. But I will say it is important to understand that these snatchbacks combo well with some of these escapes, right? And with the size ups for that matter. So like with everything else, you can combo that snatchback into a lot of things. And this is also a really good tool to shoot out of. Very, very strong animation. And before we go, I will just comment that if you're going towards the basket, you execute the hop really quick. This is a great way to generate 3-point shots if your shot isn't as slow as Michael Jordan's is. But for most good cards in the game, this is also a very strong move. But I will comment on this move a little bit also in that beyond just shooting, if you look at his shoulders, it squares him back up. So all of your tech that can come out of that, you can hit out of that, right? So that was me stepping back, hitting the in and out, the turbo in and out, and then exploding out of that turbo in and out. Now, I could just do his dribble style, but I like the smoothness and the speed of the way the combo is, and I like the freedom because out of that turbo, out of that in and out explosion, I can move, the left stick has complete freedom, right? Whereas out of a dribble style, the dribble style, you're locked a little bit in the way your shoulders are. So for me, I like that move a lot more. And that's becoming my go-to move more and more since I've discovered that move. I'm using it in all forms of gameplay. All right. So we covered the hezi. We haven't really talked about spins, but spins do have a couple of uses. Number one, if your opponent is playing physically on you and you're running in the direction, spins actually can be effective to spin them off of you. It doesn't work if you're running towards your opponent. Like if you're running at them chest to chest, the spin's not going to be strong. But if you're running at an angle here and you spin like that, that is a useful and effective move. Don't sleep on it. Another move, shout out to Jersey Made for this one. If your opponent is pressing up on you, we haven't talked a whole lot about the L trigger, but we will shortly. That's what we're about to get to. If your opponent is pressing up on you and you do the spin move, this spin move right here actually does back them off of you. Like this will automatic. Now Michael's isn't super great. He has basic moving spin. Yuck. Didn't realize what a nerf that was. Let's go to, we'll go back to Nemhart. I believe Nemhart had Penny or something like that. And here we'll see the usefulness of the spin. So you see much smoother spin on Nemhart. Let's look at Jimmy, see what he's rocking with, just to show you some different looks at what you're looking at. You see Jimmy, nice smooth on that spin. So when you, and the spin is just twirling on the right stick, right? Towards the off ball hand. And if you twirl towards the ball hand, you'll get a different result. But that spin move can be very good when people are being physical with you. And it does happen in place. So not one of the greatest moves in the game, but it does have its uses, absolutely, particularly when people are being very physical with you. All right, so now we are going to get into some of the more advanced dribbling. So when it comes to the advanced dribbling, understanding that usually it's a combination of your left stick and your right stick coming into play. So first we'll just talk about the left stick and right stick kind of meeting each other. So we talked a little bit about the momentum before, right? So the momentum is just you do an escape move and you interrupt the escape as soon as possible with the left stick, right? And let's do that slowly. So holding right trigger, gonna input the escape first, right? And then I'm going to interrupt that escape by pushing the left stick in the same direction that the ball is going towards the off ball hand. So in this case, we're going to be going between 2 and 3 and between 2 and 3. And there you go. And then between 11 and 10 and between 11 and 10. And you can do that repeatedly, right? Okay, so the thing about the momentum used to be a really powerful move in the game. But if you try to run out of the momentum, it's actually quite slow. However, the momentum is a good move to put in between moves for combos, right? So it does have a usefulness as far as that goes. But the momentum is no longer one of the stronger moves in the game. There are other ways to skin that cat, as it were. All right. So another thing we can talk about with the left stick coming in, as we talked about before, is the misdirection. So this is what we call the misdirection. It's basically the character dribbles one way and runs the other way, right? And this happens when you interrupt a behind the back or an escape cross with the left stick going in the opposite direction, right? So if I do an escape cross, right, to my right hand, pressing 3 o'clock, and now with the, let's move the ball back on that same side, and I'm going to press 9 o'clock on the left stick, and that's the misdirection going straight to the side, but you can do the same thing with the behind the back, except you're using the diagonals. And this happens just in a measured pace, 1, 2, and you'll get it. You just have to do it early enough to get to that behind the back, and you'll get that. The cool thing about this move is you can run right out of it. And really you can do anything out of it, but particularly the run and the Jamal Murray behind the back are very strong options out of that move. Let's go get Michael. Actually, you know what? Let's go back to Nemhart as we start to get into the juice here. But yeah, so that misdirection move can be very quick on a character. It can be very deceptive looking, can make your opponent second guess which way you're going. So it's a good move to learn. Again, more of a combo move, but I think a good one. And you can also same side out of that running in the same direction. So definitely misdirections are useful, worth putting time into, but not a priority for a dribbler, but definitely a nice to have. Okay, so now so we talked about the escapes, we went to misdirection, we talked about the momentum, we talked about the behind the back. Is it time to get to the cancels? Actually, before we get to the cancels, we did talk about the left trigger, so we'll revisit the left trigger here. So if I'm holding left trigger, I have access to all of my dribble moves, right, that I normally have access to, except I'm doing it from the protect dribble stance. So this is the basis for the L2 cancel. So what the L2 cancel is once you're running in the direction, you hold L2 and then you cancel into one of those moves. That's what it is. You're actually going into your protective stance from a run. As he slows down, the game has decided you're in protect stance. So he doesn't need to come to a complete stop for the game to say you're in the L2 cancel window. A lot of people say the term L2 cancel, but think about what the term is saying. The term is saying you're in the L2 and now you're in the window that you're canceling into an L2 generated move, right? So this is me doing the behind the back normally, and this is me doing the behind the back out of the L2, right? Technically, they're the same move, except if I'm running, I cannot do the behind the back while I'm moving. I can't do the behind the back, the Jamal Murray behind the back, unless I come to a complete standstill, right? And the standstill, depending on how I'm running, will be at different, paces. Now, you'll see here with the Kyrie Irving dribble style, it's actually quite good. You don't really need the L2 cancel as much with the Kyrie Irving dribble style when it comes to the behind the back. But with the escapes, you will need it a lot more. But you see here, I have to stop moving my character in order to do that. And if I was doing the L2 cancel, he's going to snap out of that run into the behind the back. You see? Immediately. No slowdown whatsoever. He snaps right out of that run into the behind the back. You got to watch the angles that you're running when you do this. But, basically, it's like that. And the cool thing about that is also you can just take basically one step in the direction and L2 cancel right away. And that's when it's really powerful. You take that one step and you L2 cancel right away because the opponent has a moment to believe that you're running. And then they buy that belief and they're cooked and you're up in the air with a shot. And that's why that's so powerful. The L2 cancel actually works with, I think, every move in the game that can be done from the L2 stance. Different moves have different usefulness, but one of the most useful is the explosive escape, right? Because you L2 cancel out of that explosive escape. So we're just doing the cancel. So we're going to break down the back and forth of it. So the first thing is you do the L2, you do your Kemba or Trey escape, Jimmy Butler escape, Kevin Durant, Kobe, they also have escapes you can explode out of. And you run in one direction, and then you L2 cancel, and then you run in the other direction with the escape. And when you do that, you have to repeat that same process. That's all it is you L2 cancel. I have an L2 cancel tutorial. You look at the Kyle Korver video for that. But you L2 cancel and you go the other way as they come to that stop. And then you have to let go of the L2 and run back in the other direction. And that's what makes it more of a difficult technique, is that you have to be on top of your escapes to like repeat it and be able to go back and forth in the same direction. You see there, I got a momentum dribble going too fast. And so that's why the practice of that L2 cancel and that escape becomes very crucial. You see there, very smooth right there. Let's look at that again. So you guys can just see what it's like, looking like executed smoothly. L2 cancel, other way, run. That's the powerful version of the technique. Now, in terms of going back and forth, I don't think that's the best move to go back and forth. And I'll show you a couple of reasons why. Number one, the left stick cancel is better for just straight up back and forth. So what the left stick cancel is basically, if you do an escape, you can cancel the escape by pressing the left stick. Now you gotta wait, but the same way you would do the momentum, right? You just wait. So it's the same input that you would use to explode, except you're not exploding, you're just tapping it. But you have to wait the same way you did when you did the regular escape. You see there, standing right still. Now, the key of that is as soon as you hit that that left stick in the same direction, you have to then press the escape back in the other direction. And that's where you get that side to side version of it, right? And you got to be like super fast with it. And then you have to, if you're going to repeat that, you have to then cancel again with the left stick. And you can also burst out of it and go in the same direction. To me, that's one of the harder things to do in the game. Some people find the left stick canceling the hardest. I actually don't find the left stick canceling to be that difficult because you have a lot of time. And really, the key to left stick canceling is always just about slowing down and making sure your angles are right. But the left stick cancel, I don't know. I don't think it's that tough once you get a hold of when that is. But for me, I have not worked very much on this left stick cancel. So I am not the right person if you just want to see that over and over. But that is how you do it though, right? If you want to see that back and forth, definitely check out Koza, who's a master at this. Definitely one of the best I've seen at doing this in game time and like very consistent. Here's the reason I don't do it. First of all, I don't have a dribble back and forth left to right style. And if I did want to dribble back and forth, let's say I wanted to do something like that, what I look at a lot is this move right here, where you go to an escape and you go to the opposite direction off of the escape, right? So you let the escape play out. I'm doing it too fast. Because you want to get in there kind of quick, right? God, look how long these escapes take. There you go. So you escape. Man, I've been doing this a long time, guys. There you go. And after the escape, you just put in the left stick going forward, right? And this is a solid kill move, a solid move coming up the court, a solid move to set people up. It's basically just a double cross that's built into the game. And as you can see there, you can also go the opposite direction. But I really like this move a lot. Look at that. That's the perfect version of it. That right there. I wasn't horizontal enough with my escapes initially. But yeah, you get that escape going and you just hold forward on the stick, and that's a nice setup. So for me, if I do just one left stick cancel, right? Which I can handle one. And then I do that move going back in the other direction. That's kind of enough back and forth for me. And I'm not saying don't practice those things. What I'm saying is like, I personally don't need to go left and right like that. That's just not my style. I'm not crapping on that style because it is not easy to do. But for me, just like one left stick cancel and then into that little diddy bop going the other way, usually that's enough for me to set up my opponent and go. And also because of the in and out that I've discovered, I can use these other moves to set up. If I want to left right on people, I can hit the escape into the C Francis, into the escape, into the C Francis, and use that explosive dribble to get right out of it, that explosive in and out. Which once I found the explosive in and out, I really did stop looking quite as much at the left stick cancel. But before the year is over, I do want to get a lot better at the left stick cancel, just because I like to be good at all of the dribbles in the game, But I think that just about covers all of the dribble moves that I can think of. If I left something out, please let me know. But for them, that should cover just about everything. I will say, as I going forward, you do have your starter steps running up the court, which you want to be aware of, using the hezi. Depending on each hezi, they'll do different starter step animations. That can be good. Don't forget your running up the court in and out moves, which can be really good. I know that's really popular in the community. Oh, there is one move I almost totally forgot. So your hop jumpers. This is also a dribble move if after the hop jumper, you explode out of it, right? So this is another way you can stop and keep going. Now, you want to hit your hesitations out of these to get faster explosions depending on the character. Now, he has Kyrie Irving dribble style, so he doesn't need the hezi quite as much as a character with, say, pro dribble style would need it, because pro dribble style doesn't have a lot of explosions. But basically, you hit your what do you call it? Your moving shots, any moving shot you want, you double tap on the right stick to guarantee you get the moving shot, and you'll get that. And that should finally cover it. We covered all size ups. We covered how to learn dribble styles, your combo moves, your attack moves, your cancel moves, And that is your dribbling one-on-one, how to do all of the dribble moves in the game. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you all in the next one. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this helps you guys going forward for those of you who need to learn the moves. And there will be timestamps in this video. If you're watching this as soon as it goes up, maybe not as soon as it goes up, but give it a day or so, there will be timestamps on this video. All right. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.